Hello, everyone, and welcome to DevOps Summit 2024. Have you ever thought about what will be the state of art and what will be the state of practice of software development by 2030 and beyond? What will be the major problems and challenges by then? And how will AI participate in shaping the future of software engineering? And how will practitioners adopt AI in their day-to-day working? What will be the visionary ideas for overcoming those problems and challenges, and what will be the role of a technology leader in this space? Today, I'm going to talk about 2025 and beyond, and I will talk about DevOps Plus for 2025, keeping you ahead of the technology curve, and I'll try to answer some of the questions for you in my conversation today. I am here to talk about DevOps Plus. I'm the founder for the Canada DevOps Community of Practice, producer for Summits Canada, chair for the Ambassador Program at Continuous Delivery Foundation, DevOps Executive of the Year, DevOps Dozen 2023. I'm also author for two progressive books on CI/CD, Strategizing Continuous Delivery in Cloud, and also the author for CI/CD Design Patterns. Both of these books are available on Amazon for purchase. My call to action is leadership practices and communities. We have several chapters here for DevOps Community of Practice in Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, Atlantic provinces. If you're curious to know what's happening in this space, you can join any of these chapters and be part of the movement. So, if you have been following my talks, my blogs, you would know that I start from the very basics. Let's remind us, and history reminds us why DevOps. What are the values which we carry along with us during this one decade of DevOps? So I will remind you about collaboration, building culture that unlocks the potential of teams through collaboration and harnessing the relationship to maximize business outcome. DevOps also emphasizes on lean, considering lean practices to eliminate waste and add efficiency, avoid death by overproduction, continuous switching, context switching, eliminating management overhead for features which no one cares, sharing, setting clear goals, making shareable goals, preparing the teams, break down lateral, horizontal, and hierarchical barriers, develop goal-oriented, cross-functional approach, which naturally brings alignment. We also talk about automation as DevOps practitioners, understanding the critical flow, complementing it with tooling and upskilling, model integrity in systems while becoming more transparent and consistent. Lastly, measurement, mechanism to communicate, analyze how improvements have helped achieve business outcome and supporting cultivation of best practices which can help gain momentum in the right direction. So now we have reviewed, what DevOps has taught us during this one decade of progress. Looking ahead, and I start with DevOps strategy and why it needs a facelift for 2025. According to the market outlook, the promise for DevOps looks great today as well. The global DevOps market projected to reach staggering 20 billion by 2026, according to Markets and Markets. DevOps market size is projected to grow by 20% from 2023 to 2032, driven by rising need to reduce the software development cycle and accelerating the delivery process. Also, if you notice on the left-hand side, I have the hype cycle of Agile and DevOps, which I will talk a little bit more detail in my next few slides. Rising need of reducing software development cycle and accelerating delivery for software has instigated many strategic initiatives in the DevOps communities. We will talk more about it during this talk. 74% of organizations are already implementing DevOps in some capacity, as reported by Puppet Labs. And estimates suggest that leading tech giants will invest approximately 1 trillion on the development of AI in the next 5 years. So we'll have to watch out how these strategic initiative towards AI could impact DevOps and how DevOps contribute to this AI movement. We will start with some reflections, and obviously, as DevOps practitioners, we always refer to DORA report, and applying insights from DORA, I have put forward some key suggestions and recommendations from DORA this time. So surprisingly, DORA report reflects that AI is hurting delivery performance. It affects on delivery throughput, and also it's likely negative, as estimated 1.5% reduction for every 25% increase in AI adoption. So it's not a kind of a linear one-to-one mapping of what kind of investment is going into AI and how it is contributing to our throughput. The negative impact on delivery stability is larger, an estimated 7.2% reduction for every 25% increase in AI adoption. So, surprising numbers. We will take a look at how, as DevOps practitioners, we have the key takeaway and we do some due diligence on what kind of impact or effect it has on our teams. Platform engineering. As part of this report, DORA suggests internal development platform users had 8% higher level of individual productivity and 10% higher level of team performance. However, organization software delivery and operations performance increased by 6% by using a platform. So they have indicated a positive outlook towards platform engineering. As a DevOps practitioner, as a leader in this space, I do believe that platform engineering has improved our kind of developer experience in some aspects, but I individually am not a big fan of platform engineering. The other reflection is the decade ahead. As the technology landscape continues to evolve, DevOps communities are committed to the fundamental principles that have always been part of the DevOps movement. And we have discussed that: culture, collaboration, automation, learning, and using technology to achieve business goals. So DevOps is here to stay. How we will contribute to this technology revolution, we will uncover it during the following slides. And lastly, I would say DevOps label. It also reflects in its report that does this label matter? Or maybe it's more of a status quo, and it's a practice that people are imbibing all these values in their day-to-day software practices. So moving on, my recommendation for leaders and practitioners would be that the DevOps strategy definitely needs a facelift. And I call it DevOps Plus for engineering leaders. And what this DevOps Plus would mean for engineering leaders, there are 4 elements of it. I will emphasize on a couple of them, and couple of them are also presented by other speakers. So I will let the other speakers go into more detail about, let's say, security and regulations, for example. But these 4 pillars or 4 key ideas on the table for 2025 for the facelift is big leap of open source. So if you are an engineering leader in the DevOps space, be mindful of that big leap of open source. We'll talk about this in the next few slides. Very, very important. We also will talk about data, machine learning, and AI, and how it will impact the journey of DevOps practitioners, even the strategy for DevOps in organizations, and large scale or long short view of DevOps. And lastly, I will touch upon DevOps tools and technology and bring some ideas on the table which are new and fresh. So let's go further, projecting the possible future with open source. So when we talk about open source solutions are becoming more popular as businesses and organizations look to cut cost, reduce vendor lock-in, and increase flexibility. And there are a few things which are happening in this space. So open source software represents a paradigm that fosters collaboration, transparency, and community-driven innovation, similar to DevOps principles. And that also emphasize that strong relationship of open source and DevOps, right? The global open source services market size is expected to reach 83.87 billion by 2030 and growing by 16.9% from 2023 to 2030, according to a report by Grandview Research. And DevOps teams often use open source tools and platforms to streamline development workflows, improve efficiency, and leading to increased demand of open source services. If you are a DevOps practitioner, you already have made up your mind on some of the open source technologies, very, very big movements which are taking place around us. I wouldn't name many of these tools and applications, because if you are not hiding beneath the rock, you would know that, what are those tools and practices. There has been a noticeable trend of adopting permissive open source license in contrast to copyleft licenses, particularly those in the GPL license family, which has decreased in usage. Permissive licenses impose minimal restrictions on software users, allowing them to incorporate the software into proprietary applications without disclosing the source code. So these are some of the key trends which are happening. Also, I would emphasize a little bit more on the revolution which is happening in the open source world as well. Localized open source. The open source software community is witnessing a remarkable surge in adoption across developing countries. And what it means is that this trend is driven by need of cost effectiveness, of course, scaling solutions that can be tailored to local needs. And with 80% of the companies reporting increased utilization of open source technologies over the past year, it empowers local developers to contribute to global projects, enriching that community with diverse perspectives and innovation. Few days back, we had KubeCon in India, and it was a huge success. So you will see more and more of these localized communities and events, and also contributions coming from developing countries. AI-driven open source projects, the integration of AI/ML into open source software is a significant trend, primarily driven by the need of more efficient and intelligent development process. The integration of AI/ML in OSS tools is not just a trend, but transformation, offering at times either completely new capabilities or new ways to contribute. So if you are contributing towards open source, do watch out for these new AI-driven open source projects. Cross-industry support and sponsorship. Of course, if you see, because of the popularity of open source software, cross-industry partnerships are becoming more and more visible and a hallmark of open source software community. Companies from diverse sectors are joining forces to leverage open source technology, be it healthcare, public sector, retail, banking, and whatnot. Communities to commercialization. Also, this is a big theme. The business model for open source is also maturing from support and services to open core in the past, and now commercialization of open source will see developer-driven growth instead of relying on founders' roadmap, for example. Developer-driven evolution of commercial models for open source is on the card, and coordinating organic growth to enterprise sales will drive new business models and new roles in the community. And there is a reference article on the slide, which you can also read through it. It is a great article, and it talks about commercialization of open source. Let's also talk about a little bit more on how the roles are transforming in open source and how DevOps practitioners can watch out for these roles. So expansion of open source program office will bring new job opportunities. One example is OSPO++, which institutionalizes open source globally. OSPO++ is a global network and a community of collaborative open source program offices focusing on supporting the core mission of objective of those like universities or governments or civic organizations through open source and collaboration. And there's a reference to OSPO++. I found it very interesting. Open source implementers and advisors. And if you have not heard about this role, I think you can watch out for that to support practical and action-oriented approach that helps address the nuanced challenges of open source software adoption within, let's say, government organizations or public institutions, or even mission critical, infrastructure and, spaces like banking, defense, and whatnot, right? So these are, key roles which might be kind of be in demand for the next few years. Open support desk, and this is another innovative kind of approach, a new segment of professionals ensuring a smooth user experience and enhanced collaboration with open source project communities. And lastly, I would say open source academy. So building open source skills, awareness, set up a community of practice for organization, public sector policymakers. So it also reflects that there are new jobs in making in this area. So now let's move our needle further for projecting the possible future with data, machine learning, and AI. Like many speakers today will talk about this, but big game changer. AI is likely to be, and how much value potential is up for grab. AI could contribute up to $15 trillion to the global economy by 2030. So how DevOps communities would contribute to it, and what would it take to design an AI-driven software engineering team? So this is something which I found it very interesting. And, there are like software development agents or project management agents or operation support agents, even research agents, which are in making. And the initial investment in developing, training, and integrating these AI systems for software development can be substantially high. But also, we will have to watch out for continuous maintenance, update, and training of AI systems to keep them effective as we incur significant cost. But these agents are coming to our rescue, and these agents will be more and more present in the ecosystem of software development and design and maintenance. So hopefully some of these agents would be your like helpers or supporting organization to kind of um, help you in crafting the new ways of working. Also, I mean, as we have mentioned that uh, DevOps Plus will also entail data, right? And um, because DevOps is a collaborative journey towards evolution of software practices, and AI will enhance predictive and adaptive decision making. So new ways to use data sources will matter. How we approach data, how we approach human-machine interaction also matters. How do we communicate and collaborate with 19 million plus developers is also something which will, lift up our kind of, um, thought process around collaboration. How do you build up communities? How do you create that ecosystem of, working together? I've also always mentioned open source project will be highest performers. There is already a microservices storm, but it will also get stronger and strengthened with this movement. But at the last, we should also consider that it's not only faster, but more valuable software delivery, which is happening as we go along. So how do you make it happen? New methods are prospected to be considered in software development process, like new and easy and human-friendly software abstraction layers, which could make the coding process as easy job for any person. So everybody is talking about hyper assistance, for example, and for suggestions for improving developer working routine in 2030. AI systems were envisioned to be used for creating code by exporting or reusing already existing codes, and AI system moderators or developers could be one of the new job roles in making. They obviously, these people will embrace the needed skill set and utilizing from AI as complementary tooling rather than as independent software development systems. So these moderators and developers could help you, deploy your software development stack in general and by and large. So I will also do some of the key recommendations when it comes to data, machine learning, and AI. There's a substantial amount of excitement and enthusiasm when we talk about AI initiatives. But balancing the effort into securing AI initiatives while building momentum into AI-based innovation is required. How do we collaborate with security expert, for example, early and often in the development process? How do we protect against AI vulnerabilities, specific threats for AI environment like model invasion, data poisoning, functional extraction, advanced capabilities like malicious cousins of ChatGPT or WormGPT, right? Integrating ev evolving regulatory requirements. There is a talk on this, so I would not emphasize more on that. Ensuring responsible use of third-party applications and mandating partners to use responsible AI, and creating an evolving AI security process and policies aligned with the existing and upcoming regulations. So these are, key things in the making when you talk about data, machine learning, and AI. Now we talk about a little bit more of roles. So we talked about these moderators and collaborators in the software development cycle. We also talked about AI agents. We also see that 30 to 35% increase in demand of roles such as data analyst, scientist, big data specialist, business intelligence analyst, database and network professionals, data engineers. That is driven by the advances and growth in adoption of frontier technologies, which will rely on big data. And there is a report from vForum, and I have sticked a link that provides you like a more detailed reflection on future of jobs of 2030. Now we come to the last section of this talk, which will talk about DevOps Plus and how the outlook for DevOps professional looks like in 2025. So I've taken the hype cycles from Gartner. I've tried to kind of research a little bit on, what can be the next steps for DevOps practitioners, site reliability engineering, and how do you see the outlook for tools and technology. So there are a few things which stands out for me. Obviously, if you see the hype cycle of DevOps, there's a lot of mention about technologies which are existing for some time now, um, like observability, chaos engineering. They also talk about in the hype cycle the AI assistance part, which we have talked about, augmented software engineering, which we have kind of talked about a little bit. Um, and there are some mentions about some interesting topics which I will discuss, like policy as code. I also think that design ops is an interesting kind of area to dig into. Um, some of these areas which are mentioned in this hype cycle, I'm personally not a big fan of it, but you can go and look at some of these elements and how they will impact the DevOps practitioners and how do the practices would affect. But I will actually concentrate my talk on things which excites me the most in these hype cycle. So I will talk about some new next generation practices. So let's get going. I have divided this into two parts: operational practices, including, let's say, open SLO management, AI assistance, log monitoring, continuous resilience automation. I will talk about feedback loop and how observability driven development, for example, open observability, managing AI generated threats, etc., can be, the next steps to watch out for DevOps practitioners. So starting from some of the new concepts or new perspectives, infrastructure from code, not infrastructure as code. So infrastructure as code is where you as a developer need to explicitly define infrastructure resources in separate files, say within CloudFormation or serverless framework through a YAML or a CDK stack. But There is a new initiative which is infrastructure from code. It's a way of creating applications such that at deploy time, your cloud provider inspects your application code and then automatically takes care of provisioning whatever underlying infrastructure your application code needs. There are many such new tools which are on the right hand side. I have like linked some of these tools. There are some good references and good reads. You can also hook on to infrastructure from code.com to know more about this movement. Essentially, what it does is applications make applications portable across technologies and providers, and infrastructure should be self-provisioning. So that is something which I'm very excited about, and I'll see how it goes from here to the next step. Then I talk about policy as code. Policy as code is not entirely new, but I think it will gain momentum in 2025. Policy as code refers to a practice of managing and implementing policy decisions through code and making them enforceable and verifiable in environment. People rely on around a common set of as code skills and reuse existing skills, including familiarity with CI/CD workflow. Tools like CPL, Terraform, AWS config rules lead to the implementation of policy as code in various environments and alignment of a unified process workflow. So it is a good kind of initiative which I see that could scale in 2025 with number of regulatory changes, policy control, which needs to be done for software. I also see that DevOps practitioners are at a crossroad for cost, right? Currently, cloud spending represents approximately 30% of overall IT budgets and will exceed $1.3 trillion by 2025, according to Dave McCarthy. Unmonitored cloud usage. There are also unused cloud licenses to consider excess left of accidentally during nights and weekends and variable cycle cost depending on number of processes used to run code. So all this is accounting to like higher cost, and Gartner also advises CIOs to negotiate commercial terms with their cloud providers such as volume or time-based commitments, and another option is to move to on-demand to reserve instances. So there will be a substantial movement around augmented FinOps. So the traditional FinOps focuses on fostering collaboration between engineering, finance, technology, and business teams, and it provides for foundational approaches to managing cloud financials, but often lacks the depth needed for effective cost optimization. With augmented FinOps, building on traditional FinOps by infusing it with artificial intelligence, machine learning, these technologies enable autonomous and continuous optimization of data infrastructure, for example, shifting from reactive cost management to proactive strategic planning. So you will see a lot of shift in the approach for FinOps, and people will start to talk about augmented FinOps more and more. I also have touched base upon AI assistance for, let's say, developer community, but there is more from AI assistance, and AI assistance as code stands for artificial intelligence infrastructure as code, a new approach to automate the generation of, let's say, infrastructure as code templates, configuration, utilities, queries, and more using OpenAI APIs. So you will see a lot of these, things in action: generation of IAC, query building, command line builders, generating configuration files, and generating also policy as code, right? So all that can be seen in 2025. Now, I will also talk about one of the most interesting and passionate area, and I think this area will have a substantial, progress in 2025. We have seen that 70% of new cloud native application monitoring will use open source instrumentation rather than vendor specific agents for improved interoperability. That is what Gartner reflects. 70% of new cloud native applications will adopt open telemetry for observability rather than vendor specific. We are also seeing bring your own storage backend to enable more flexible and efficient utilization of infrastructure, insertion of LLMs to simplify user experience for both analytics and downstream automation. There is another area where a substantial kind of progress will be seen is open observability alongside open telemetry. The idea of capturing telemetry signals from many different technologies, leveraging open standards, open source tools, and application programming interfaces. So this is a area which will develop in 2025 and beyond. Now the question is, how will the technology jobs look like for like 2030, and what DevOps practitioners should watch out for? So there are many things which are kind of impacting this. McKinsey and Corporation, a skill shift, automation, and future of the workforce report says demand for higher cognitive skill, just creativity, critical thinking, decision making, and complex information processing will grow through 2030. What are the specific technology skills which will become irrelevant, and how practitioners could kind of take that next step? So I have quoted a few like people in this slide. Um, Employees who are generalists with broad skills and but no contributory areas like cyber, cloud, etc. of subject matter expertise will likely to struggle to remain relevant in current or future positions. So think about like how do you kind of rescale and foster this challenge to build the next steps for you and your organization. Those who will excel at individual programming languages currently in use may feel a sense of security now, but needs to understand multiple languages to grow quickly in the next few years. And lastly, at the moment, IT skills nearing the end of life cycle, and there are many, right? So think about like how do you build progressive experience through cross-functional engagements, reskilling, upskilling initiatives, and being part of strategic initiatives in your organization. Concluding my talk, leadership in the age of AI for DevOps practitioners is critical. Leaders play an instrumental role in creating effective governance and strategies built upon various pillars as discussed in this talk. So, obviously, I've talked about why DevOps strategy needs a facelift. How do you create that kind of a strategic outlook where the investment for, your organizations should go? How do you foster open source initiatives, what kind of new roles can be created in an organization, how AI, data, and machine learning capabilities can change the game for you, and lastly, what kind of tools and technology will become relevant for next 2 to 5 years. So concluding my talk, I want to thank you all for listening to me today. And hopefully, we keep on bringing fresh topics for you to keep you interested in 2025. I would like to wish you happy holidays and a happy new year. Thank you very much for attending this talk at the DevOps Summit.